Troy?
Kick it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting episode of Hardheaded. With me, as always, is Mr. Matt Amos and Mr. Chet Sears. And ladies and gentlemen, today we have a special guest in studio. This is becoming a regular occurrence.
Yeah, studio guest. We love him.
I'm liking it. So, Chet, you want to introduce our guest?
We've got Jeff Turner with us today. Jeff, I'm going to introduce people to you how I know you, but then you've got a pretty extensive background as well. But Jeff is a former Bible study facilitator, I guess would be the better word for it. But I was invited 4 years ago to do a Bible study at Jeff's house and with a bunch of other men, and it was a fantastic opportunity. But one of the things that I learned after getting to know him, your professional career is quite extensive. Working for Boeing, starting out and ended up as being the CEO of Spirit AeroSystems, which you were actually a huge part of the split. So for our listeners that don't know, I'm sure everybody knows about Boeing aircraft manufacturing because all the Boeing airplanes that are out there. But there was a huge Boeing factory here in Wichita that built fuselages. Right. And Jeff was a part of taking that facility and some other parts and setting that aside and becoming your own company, which was called Spirit AeroSystems. And that took place back in...
That took place in 2005.
Okay. And so kind of started out on their own. So you were the CEO of a brand new company that already had established processes and established customer base, but kind of went from being a child in a big organization to out on your own.
Right. Yeah, it was an exciting time.
So at what point in your career, and this is the fascinating thing that I think I learned, at what point in your career did you ever think, I'm CEO material?
Well, I think as long as I was working for Boeing, I was pretty sure I'd never be the CEO of Boeing.
Right.
I preferred to live in Wichita, and the CEOs at Boeing in those days lived in Seattle, and I had lived in Seattle some, but I preferred Wichita, and so I didn't have it on my radar.
Right.
There was one time way early in my career, I had worked for Boeing for a little while I was still in college, and I'd gone to work for another company, and the folks at the other company said, unless you're in sales, you can't be the CEO of this company. And I didn't want to be in sales.
Right.
So I thought, well, I only want to work where I know if I'm capable and the opportunities present themselves, I could be the CEO.
Right.
And if you look at the lineage of CEOs at Boeing, there's been engineers, there's been people that were primarily marketing and sales people, program people, attorneys, finance people. And so I when I got the opportunity, I went back to Boeing and was there, Boeing or Spirit, until I retired in 2013.
Yeah. So your background is engineering?
Well, it's actually my degree's in mathematics, and there was this brand new thing back in the 70s when I was going to school called computing, and I got a emphasis in computer programming. Mm-hmm. So I started at Boeing as a part-time computer programmer while I was still finishing my my degree at Wichita State, and then hired in full-time when I got a degree.
Yeah. So and as soon as you said background, your degree's in mathematics, I think I know I felt dumber. Like, probably all of us.
I tried to run an equation in my head. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I decided mathematics wasn't for me when I got into this class, upper level class, and we had to prove that A plus B equal B plus A. And I'm thinking, I think I've gone as far in math as I want to go. Because when I have to start proving the intuitively obvious, I've chosen a field that's
not
not
for you.
something that's going to work for
So
me.
Troy's been recently helping out his daughter. I'm assuming it's your daughter.
Yeah.
With math.
fifth grade math. And,
Yeah. So as he's helping her, he's texting the rest of the family to get answers.
To get help.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's like, I need help with this, and then if I try to get to it before my wife does, because Ashley's so much better at math than I am.
Well, and y'all are so competitive. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you probably get a win if you get it before her.
Yeah. Well, it's like, oh, you're on your phone, quicker. It's not necessarily the best thing.
I stink at all of it, with the exception of my daughter came home, and I think I mentioned that maybe before, but it was basic trigonometry, and that has to do with almost the trajectory of rifle rounds and stuff like that. So it was really connecting with me on distances and all that. But that's about all I know. Algebra, calc, I don't do that.
No, I'm right there with you. So you decided not to do that too much in your
Right,
career.
But it's very close to engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and computer science is very close to engineering. So the thought processes behind it. It was in a technical company,
Yeah.
and so I fit in fairly well.
And you didn't spend your whole time in that. You got into leadership fairly early,
Yeah,
if I recall.
it's really interesting. Somebody asked me one time, how'd you do it? How'd you do it? And I said, well, the most important thing was, you guys probably don't remember this, but in 1969, 70, and 71 was probably the biggest downturn Boeing ever experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And laid off thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And the Wichita facility that had peaked at like 33,000 people went down to 4,004 employees, if
Whoa.
my memory
Wow.
serves me right.
Yeah.
And I got hired in right after that.
Oh.
So right as they were coming back up after that, and I used to tell people, you hire in, you're a new employee, relatively young. They had laid off literally everybody between me and the 45-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so in 20 years of career, and you're like the only one in the race, it's easy to win a race when you're the only one in it. And then we went from 4,000 employees to like 20,000 in the ensuing 20 years. And, if you find your way to the men's room, they'd put you in charge of something.
Right.
And so it was a combination of opportunity. I was computing came along pretty strong. I was running a part of the computing organization that worked with the executives and the factory managers, and so I got known.
Mm-hmm.
I always had a philosophy of take better care of your customer than you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that really served me well. One of my bosses came to me one day and said, why does everybody want you on their project? And it wasn't because I was the most brilliant computer programmer out there. In fact, I wasn't really very good at it. But I really cared about the customer, and we call them customers because they were all internal customers.
Right.
But I just got a reputation as somebody that, somebody will take care of you, somebody will work hard, somebody will get the job done for you. And it really, really served me well. It seemed like every time I'd turn around, every time I'd get a little bit bored, they'd give me a new job.
We find something else. And so you didn't turn down much. You were open for the opportunities and some challenges that were there.
No, not that. A lot of people say never say no, but I think you got to be really strategic of what you say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got offered jobs, if you will, a lot of jobs that I chose not to do.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one in particular that they were going to do a brand new manufacturing suite of programs. And all my peers, I was a first level supervisor, and all my peers were saying, I wouldn't go near that project with it,
Mm-hmm.
They were all
doomed to fail.
Heading for the hills. It's doomed to fail. It's too big, it's too hard, blah, blah, blah. And I was young, full of piss and vinegar, didn't know any better. And I thought, that is exactly what I want to do.
Right.
And so I maneuvered my way to talked to the big boss and said, hey, I want to do that. And that was probably the best career step I ever made.
Yeah.
Because we pulled it off. We brought it in on budget, on time, which wasn't done very often with computer programs. Still isn't.
No, it's not.
But we did, and it really, from then I just got a lot of opportunity.
You got some recognition out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, probably impressed your peers because they didn't want to get near it, and then you volunteered for it and actually pulled it off, or you and the team.
Yeah. You know, one thing, Chet, it's fortunate I didn't spend a lot of time with any peers.
Yeah.
Because I was moving pretty quickly. Because peers really don't like you to, there's that Japanese saying that, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down.
Yeah.
And, so if you're a doer, you get things done, you're not afraid of things that other people think are hard, that doesn't really always endear you to your peers. But I, frankly, would become their boss usually before they could get me.
Yeah. Got to be careful. So tell me a little bit about that, and we don't necessarily need to go through your whole career journey, but I mean, you learned a lot. You were in some places that probably had some jobs that you didn't want at some point. You wanted to get out of, and but still persevered with the same organization. But then you get to the point where you're one of the site leaders here in Wichita when there was some cost cutting that Boeing was looking at, or that there was an opportunity to say we think we could do this on our own.
Yeah, well, I want to go back to one point, Chad, if I could. It's really interesting. I've been a man of faith. I haven't always lived my faith as much as I would have liked to, but there's a couple scriptures that always meant so much to me, and one of them is the steps of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord. And there was one time, and in a big company like Boeing, you know who your quote unquote competitors are for the next good job, right? I mean, you just know. If you're in sports, you know who you got to guard, you know who you got to be a little faster than, and it's the same
right
in the corporate structure. And there were 3 or 4 guys I knew them well. I loved them, loved working with them. They were great. But I'd look at them and I go, I'd work for him. I'd work for her, but I won't work for him.
Right.
And so you know who your competition is, right? And they did a huge reorganization. The company had sent me off to MIT for a year, trained me. That's usually the stamp of approval. You're going to be at least a vice president unless you really screw up. And they did a huge reorganization. I had been a director, so the company goes, supervisor, crew chief, supervisor, goes all the way up to director, senior manager, director, and then vice president. And they'd done a big reorganization, and I'd been a director for like 5 or 6 years.
Right.
And I got a new job. My new job was the tooling manager. That was my title.
So it went from a director level.
So I went from a director to a tooling manager, and I was in a funk because I knew what the key jobs were, and
that wasn't in.
And I didn't get one of those key jobs. They other guys got those key jobs,
right?
And I became the tooling manager. And not only that, the tooling manager's office is in the old Plant 1, which was the original Stearman building.
So
it's
off the beaten path,
building.
it's the
Yeah, and I'd been in an office, on Mahogany Row, right down from the general manager, vice president.
So you're not bumping into anybody that when you go to get coffee. That,
I am off in the corner, and I'm thinking,
Exile Island over there.
Yeah.
What did I do? And so I'm in a funk, right? And these words keep coming back. In fact, I thought one day, Jeff, do you really believe what you say you believe? The steps of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord. He knows. Do you think he's forgotten you? Do you think he doesn't know where you are? And so I just woke up one day. I actually woke up at my desk. Woke up mentally and spiritually, and I said, you know what? I'm going to just do this job like God
Right.
would like me to do this job. And you know what? To this day, including Vice President, General Manager of the division, President of Spirit, it is my favorite job ever
The tooling manager.
that I did.
Yeah.
And I think I made a difference. I think you go out there today, you'll see things I put in place. The tooling people, I don't know if you ever run.
I've been around. Yeah.
They're the coolest people.
Yeah.
They're the doers. I mean,
Right.
they get things done. They figure things out. They do things nobody else knows
Yeah.
how to do. And I had a great time. And I was depressed when they gave me the job, and I was depressed when they
Took it from you.
promoted
Yeah.
me out of it.
Yeah.
But not only did I love doing the job, it's the job that taught me how the factory works.
So you knew.
And I couldn't really run the factory, having not come up through the factory,
Yeah.
without knowing how it works.
Yeah.
And they knew that. That's why they put me in that job. But I didn't know that's why they'd put me in the job. So it worked out great. I loved it. And then what was your question?
Oh my gosh. At what point did you think, hey, I'm assuming from that you got to the a vice president level, and then
Then I became a director of the factory, and I had several factory director jobs, and then I became the vice president. The director of finance.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, you knew numbers.
No, well, I got interviewed by the CFO of Boeing, a guy named Boyd Guyman, and before they'd give me the job in Wichita, he had to say okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up to see him, and Boyd came in, and I'd met Boyd before, but never really sit down and talk to him. Boyd said, "Now let's see, Jeff, if I've got this right, you're the guy that's unencumbered with detailed knowledge of finance."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Boyd,
He's
that is
the wrong guy."
Nicest way anybody has ever said. You have no idea what we're doing." And Boyd and I hit it off, and they gave me the job, and I had it for 6 months.
Oh yeah.
And my boss, who was the general manager, got promoted, and they put me into the general manager.
So not enough time to make an impact, but not enough time to mess anything up either.
Absolutely, that's correct.
I had it was pretty funny. There's quite a few times I was reporting out to a vice president and on a first name basis with him. And then, I don't know, a couple months later, there's this big, quarterly review or whatever. And I don't know what I did. I don't even think it was wrong. It was viewed poorly. And he's like, well, who's responsible for this? Well, the person that was answering the question, which shouldn't have, spoke up and said, Chad. Didn't know me that well, and so didn't say my name, said Chad, which most people, if they get my name wrong, they say Chad. And then so the vice president was like, well, you tell Chad that such and such and so and so, and we got to get this thing, and then so when we got done with the meeting, a couple of my buddies walked over there and was like, man, I'm glad you're not that Chad guy, because so then we made it. We made a pact from that point forward. If anybody ever asked directly who did something that was bad, it was Chad that did that, and then, don't worry, I'll take care of it.
I'll fix him.
Yeah. But then you got to the point where there was the leadership team over the campus here in Wichita, and there was a point where you and some others basically went to Boeing and said, "Hey, here's an idea." Yeah. How did that go? Because I've already seen some boldness in your career path, so it doesn't surprise me that there would be some boldness here, but it's on a much larger scale with a whole lot more people that are going to be impacted on how this goes.
Yeah, I think going back, and what happened is I became the general manager of the division, and as such, and I sat on the leadership teams in Seattle for the commercial airplane division, and it became really obvious to me fairly quickly after I got the general manager's job that the strategy of Boeing was moving away from the kind of work that we did. Mm-hmm. Not that the kind of work we did wasn't important. It is essential.
You don't have an airplane without it. Yeah.
But they were going to focus on other things, and the Spirit plant today the Boeing Wichita plant when it was Boeing Wichita. It was very, very capital intensive.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
investment, a lot of money that
machines,
has to go there.
Really billions of dollars of investment to be able to do what they can do. And Boeing wanted to pull away from that and have that kind of work being done by their supply base.
Right.
But Wichita was so big and so critical to the flow of building the airplanes that they could not figure out what to do with this.
Right.
Well, I'm sitting here running this division. It's got incredible people, incredible processes, great capability. And I could see over the years, and it would take years, for that to just dwindle away to nothing, really.
They just take a piece here,
Take a piece
give that
here,
to a different, bid this out.
Under capitalized.
Right.
And so I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be the leader that leads us
decline
into oblivion.
Yeah.
And so there were several strategic planning processes that I was a part of. And they basically had said, sell all this small stuff. We don't want to do it. Invest in the big assembly plants because we want to do that. And then there was always Wichita there, kind of this
in-betweener.
In-betweener. And I thought, you know what? I want to be in an organization that's right dead center in the bullseye of strategy. Mm-hmm. Not hanging around out here in the edges trying to
figure out what to do with
does
this puzzle piece even belong on the table?
And so the first thing we did is we went to Seattle and said, you know what? You should make Wichita another division of Boeing who is focused on supplying parts. And we can supply parts to the industry. And they said, no, we don't want to do that.
Right.
And
there's still a lot of capital they'd have to be.
And then I said, well, but you really, then you should spin us out. Mm-hmm. Well, they had told me I was in charge of Wichita and Tulsa and a couple other small places. And they had told me to sell Tulsa. So I went back and said, you know what? I think we ought to take Wichita and Tulsa, put them together, and sell both of them. Mm-hmm. And that resonated because they were trying to go asset light.
Yeah.
They were trying to make all kinds of commitments they'd made to stockholders and the board and all that. Number of employees, assets,
right?
Return on assets, all those things.
Cash flow. I mean, tied up in so much.
We made the case at the right time, and that's what led to the. But it was all based on wanting to preserve the capability, and really the people that did the great job.
Yeah. So one of the things, and fantastic, and those listeners that are in Wichita kind of know the success story from that perspective. You going through a new identity, a new type of pride. I think I moved to Wichita in 2007, so kind of after you guys just
just done it.
Getting off the ground, but it was kind of funny from that completely outside because I'm outside the aircraft industry and everything as a whole, but being in a room where somebody's like, "Oh, where do you work?" and somebody was like, "Well, I work for Boeing." And no, you don't. You work for Spirit. Just the hey, this is us now. It's headquartered in Wichita, right? So there was a whole lot of city pride, I think, around that move, and definitely strengthening. And what I've seen since then, it's opened you up to have multiple customers, and Spirit now being, they've got a couple different divisions working with government contracts and other things that would have never
would have happened. Probably the best way to look at it is our addressable market quadrupled the day we became Spirit.
Yeah.
Because our addressable market before we became Spirit was Boeing internal commercial products.
Right.
And there is a great big aerospace aviation industry outside of that. Although that's a big piece.
Right.
And it's still a great big piece of Spirit's business. But the addressable market just exploded the day we became an independent company.
Yeah. So I think what's fascinating, and so our listeners kind of have a little bit of, the business savvy, your drive, your, my goodness, the president of a large company. But while all this is going on, what I think is very, very neat, dedicated husband, you raised 2 kids through all of this, and a very active member of the community. So how did you, you still do it? We'll get in a little bit about what you're doing today, but how do you balance, and how did you balance a lot of your I could call them competing values? It's very valuable to be successful in your career, but it's extremely valuable to you to have a good relationship with your wife and to be a good father.
Well, I think, Chet, it's something I had to learn to do. And some lessons you learn the hard way, and you get away with it. It doesn't take you down. And sometimes you learn lessons the hard way, and it takes you down.
Yeah.
I wasn't balanced. I wasn't. I believe firmly that we are multifaceted as human beings. We're body, mind, soul, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned through the years that the more you do to keep those spheres, if you will, in balance,
mm-hmm.
the healthier you are as a person. And early in my career, I got out of balance, and I was more concerned about success on the job than I was about other things. Mm-hmm. And the biggest conflict I fought for the first probably 15 or more years of my career was the idea that I had Christian values and I had business values.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like they were in conflict.
Right.
And so I was constantly trying to give my spiritual values priority over my business values. And something happened that one day that clearly stripped that away and showed me deep into my soul that what I was really committed to was my business success.
Yeah.
Not my success as a dad and a husband and a follower of Christ.
Right.
And it was almost wrecked me.
Yeah.
I think probably was right on the edge of what they used to call nervous breakdowns. But God in His grace brought me back. And then probably 5 years later, I ran across I think I've mentioned to you, Chet, a book called Your Work Really Matters to God.
Yeah.
And so what I did was studied that, read it, realized that what I was doing in my work was in fact an act of worship if I did it God's way.
Yeah.
And gave Him the results, not me.
Mm-hmm.
Which I tried to do. It didn't always work, but I tried to do that. And that kind of brought, and I just refused to be somebody different on Sunday when I went to church than I was on Monday when I went to work. I just strove for authenticity everywhere and be the same person. If you're in a church board meeting, if you're in a civic meeting, if you're sitting with your staff, if you're hunting with your buddies, be the same person.
Right.
It is so freeing.
Yeah.
To not have to change masks, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in the latter half of my career and now my post-career career, I think I'm pretty authentic. Mm-hmm. I feel like, you know what, if this is who I am, and I'm not going to change it based on what your expectations are, unless you're Rhonda.
Yeah.
In which case,
I'm going to listen.
I will modify my thoughts because, frankly, God's given her to me and me to her to grow. Rhonda's my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right. Just to be clear, Rhonda's his wife.
To grow us, not to just tell us we're wonderful as we are, but to help us grow.
Yeah.
And so I try to listen a little more intently.
Yeah, and I could tell you from the interaction that we've had that's genuine and coming from somebody who's been through a lot of the stuff. And I think back to our men's group and a lot of the guys that were in there and all the stuff that they were going through. And I've used your term, and you probably got it from somebody else, but max burn. Yeah. Like, how long are you going to be at max burn before you burn out? Right. You got to take care. And if you're at max burn at work, are you okay at home? Or if you're at max burn at work and you're at max burn at home, like something bad is about to happen. Yeah. Like you've got to be careful. So I've always appreciated your advice, having been through a lot of that and learned some lessons the pretty hard way to be authentic and say, hey guys, let me tell you that you got to be careful what you're doing.
Well, I can tell you what got me in trouble was not saying no.
Yeah.
You'd be great to teach this Sunday school class. So I'd teach the Sunday school. We'd like to have you on the board. So I'd be on the board. And some civic organization would say, hey, we'd like you to come do this. Would you? I mean, it's all ego.
And those are all good things.
But it's all ego feeding.
Yeah.
We want you. Yeah. You're wonderful. Come be part of this. And one of the things I came out of that with to balance is learning to say no.
Right.
And there aren't very many things I say yes to. There's almost nothing I say yes to immediately.
Right.
I got to think about it. I talk to Rhonda about it usually, and then decide if does that fit or not. Because in the moment, I'm really susceptible to flattery.
Yeah.
And it's flattering to be asked to do something.
Right. And just to be clear, the first answer to be on the podcast was no, but that's because you're going fishing somewhere.
I think I
was. You went to, was it Alaska?
Yeah. Was it this summer?
Yeah.
I went fishing in Alaska. Second time I've done it. I had a great, brought 140 pounds of fish back.
Oh, salmon?
Wow. Salmon, halibut, some rockfish.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Matt does quite a bit of fishing in Alaska as well.
Do you?
Where were you at?
Sitka.
Oh, Sitka? Yep.
Yeah. Went out in the ocean every day. Got to the boat at 5 a.m., got back to the dock at 5 p.m. I mean.
So you slept well every night?
Slept well every night. I had trouble taking a shower. The walls kept moving.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. After all day on the boat.
That's awesome.
Which is crazy, but.
So, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, because I think this is fascinating. There's a lot of I think a lot of people that would have a rewarding career, one that satisfies from your soul. Like I've got a lot of accomplishment here. I'm going to be comfortable financially, but you turned around, retired, and now you have a bunch of things going on. You're really impacting Wichita with a lot of different little businesses that you got going, and I don't necessarily need to run down on all those, but you're really focused on some pretty neat things.
Yeah, I retired in 2013, and my son Bryce lives in Wichita, and we were looking for a company to buy, and for him to buy, and I was helping him. And he ended up buying a company that's now called Hornet Cutting Systems. It's out of Valley Center. Mm-hmm. He'd be great on your podcast, by the way.
Yeah, Army veteran, by the way. Yeah,
Army vet. Yeah. Great guy. And so we worked on that, and then Lynn Nichols, who's a good friend of mine, owned Yingling. Andrew, his son's now running Yingling. He'd be a great guy on your.
Yeah.
He loves airplanes. Good, wonderful guy. He and I and Bryce formed a group called TNW, Turner Nichols Williams. It's a real catchy thing.
Spent a lot of marketing dollars with a firm trying to come up with that name.
Yeah. And we we just started investing in. So some of them we do together, some of them I do by myself. But I thought, I don't want to play golf every day. I like to play golf, but not every day. And I want to give back. So many people helped me. I didn't know what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And just lots and lots of people helped me all along the way. And I wanted to help. I was involved in a group called what's now the Greater Wichita Partnership.
Yeah.
And I spent my whole life going to meetings, and I don't particularly like meetings, but I didn't want to just go to more meetings.
Right.
Although that's what I do now still. But I wanted to help entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so put a little fund aside, and I've invested in 18 or 20.
Yeah.
Startup companies, exciting. I think it's important to provide some insight, some mentoring, listening, as well as funds. So I'm just hoping that, 2 or 3 of them make enough money that I can keep feeding this habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Get to meet a lot of really neat people. Entrepreneurs are interesting, exciting people.
Well, and it's you've got the business side, and you know what it's like to have to get 2 months worth of analysis and 17 different signatures to get a project off the ground, and now you're talking to folks that have a great idea, and it's so you could probably see some of the freedom that's there as well.
Yeah, although some of them need to spend a little more time in analysis.
Understand? Yeah, it's not just a great idea that's going to make everything work. Yeah.
But I mean, there's several of them pretty exciting that hopefully we'll do. And I concentrated in the Wichita area. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, go run off to somewhere else.
Well, and you mentioned that earlier. Wichita is near and dear to your heart, and your job took you away a few times, but you definitely wanted to come back here. And you're in your retirement career. You're still focused on the Wichita and the Kansas area.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever not do something.
Yeah.
Maybe I will. I always think it's humorous. I have I'm 70 now. So I have 70 years of picture of the year from the Academy Awards to watch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I don't think I've seen 10 of them.
Right.
Probably maybe a
They're normally not that good either.
Well, but and then people say, "Well, have you seen this movie series or this TV series?" And I say no, but one of these days,
we've got a couple of podcast episodes where we talk about our favorite action movies and our favorite comedies. So we could send you a list too.
Yeah,
stuff you need to catch up on.
Mine would be the Lego movies I watch.
Yeah, with your grandkids.
Oh yeah, I've seen those quite a few times.
Lego Batman is probably my favorite.
Yeah.
That's a lot of fun. Well, Jeff, thanks for being with us. You're going to hang around and go through our next segment, which we kind of wanted to pay a little bit of homage to the aircraft industry. We're going to talk about our top 3 aircraft, and we'll allow for some honorable mentions if you have more than 3.
1797, establishing dominance. A young nation begins the formation of the world's most formidable fleet of naval ships with the commissioning of its first ship, the U.S. frigate Constellation. A lively blend of rosemary, lemon, and peppermint, 1797 is a great blend to start your day. It has a great awakening quality with a minty kick. Much like stepping out on a deck of a ship cruising the brisk ocean waters, this blend will give you that early morning boost. Check it out at admiralspennant.com.
Admiral's Pennant Beard Oil. Without it, you might as well shave. And we're back. Matt's still having a little bit of difficulty there on
Almost.
On the DJ booth machine there. All right, we're back with top 3. Today, we're going with top 3 aircrafts.
Aircrafts or aircraft?
Well, 3 is plural.
3 is plural.
Aircrafts. Crafts.
Yeah. So, and that's
I
all
didn't know
my
if
notes.
It was like moose. We don't say mooses or meese. We just say moose.
Moose and
Many mooses and or many mises and many pieces. Is that what Broughton said? Yeah. I still think about that.
all right, we're going to start out with Mr. Matt Amos. What are your top three?
All right. Number 3, B-1 bomber. And that was because they used to have those here at McConnell. I used to see them fly all the time, and that was like the big thing.
Yeah.
Like at a Wranglers game or something like back when the Wranglers were here before it was the Wing Nuts, and now it's the Wind Surge.
Yeah.
But, they'd sometimes do a flyover at the games, and I don't know. I think it's just the afterburner on that.
They're loud too, right?
They are
they're
super
really
loud, but it's an impressive piece of equipment. And I've got the opportunity as a kid. I think I might have been 10 or 11 years old, and got invited out to McConnell to actually sit in the flight simulator for the B-1. So it's an actual cockpit and sitting in the thing with the video screens, and probably one of the coolest memories from being a kid is just sitting in that cockpit and being able to fly it. And so that's always been one for me. Number 2 is going to be the AH-1W Cobra attack helicopter.
Ooh, okay.
And
Which qualifies as an aircraft.
Yes,
right?
I wasn't.
Airplanes. Yeah.
I wasn't aware going into this. I thought it was airplanes, and then today he corrects me and says no, aircraft.
Because he doesn't read the notes that we send out.
Ooh, that opens up. I saw air.
Yeah.
And but the sound of that particular aircraft.
Yes.
When you're in a dire situation, is phenomenal. So and just the I guess the security and surveillance that they're able to provide all of us on the ground is.
So the Marines still flying that?
I believe they upgraded to the
Apache.
No, that's the Army. The Viper. It's still in. So the Cobra attack helicopter is still a Huey series aircraft. But they've upgraded to the Viper. So I think they started doing manufacturing on that in 2000.
Yeah.
For the Viper, and then previous to that, I think it goes back to almost the 60s for the Cobra.
Yeah, because they took the chassis, I guess, I don't know, of the Huey and created an attack helicopter out of the mechanics that already existed on that transport helicopter.
But when you see those guns firing and then the gun stop and a couple of rockets fired and they followed up with some more rounds, it's a confidence inspiring boost when you're on the field. And then number 1 is another one of those same types of aircraft, and that is the A-10 Warthog.
Yes.
And simply because that thing can take so many hits, it can devastate pretty much anything it wants to, and the sound it makes when it flies over, that whine that it has is incredible. I love that. I don't know why.
It's awesome.
It may be just like some of those that are painted with the teeth.
Shark teeth.
Yeah, the shark
tiger teeth. I'm sorry.
On the front of it, and then they got the gun just poking right out in front of it. I mean,
yeah.
Who wouldn't love that?
Yes.
So that's my number 1.
Not many people wouldn't love that.
Yeah.
Except unless you're the enemy, I guess.
Well, yeah, you might hate to see that coming.
Yes. So I'm going to go with and I have an honorable mention just because I think it's probably going to be mentioned later, and if it's not, shame on us. So I'm going to go ahead and mention as our honorable mention the SR-71 Blackbird. It's awesome. That I think it's phenomenal that this was developed in the late 1950s. They got it off the ground in the 60s, and it just fascinates me. And Kelly Johnson, the leader of Skunk Works for Lockheed Martin, that helped develop this thing, I think he's a genius. And I'll get to some of that here in just a little bit.
That thing leaks like a sieve on the ground.
Oh,
until it gets up to heats up a little
expands.
bit. Yeah.
So they gotta as soon as it gets up, they gotta fill it up with gas.
Yeah, because because the seams, the joints they expand so much that when the aircraft is cool, they've contracted and it's leaking. It's fantastic. So number 3, I just think this is a iconic picture of what beautiful aviation looks like, and that's a P-51 Mustang. North American Aviation developed that in 1940. Got a lot of World War II flight time. They actually brought it into the Korean War until the jets took over, and then sold all of that to I don't know, 15 different countries. And it was in service as a military aircraft into the 70s for like Italy and Greece, a few of these nations that are out there. But that thing with the Rolls-Royce engine has an iconic sound, and it's just a beautiful aircraft. Number 2, the U-2. Lockheed Martin design, Kelly Johnson design. I think this was pretty fascinating. In the book, he talked about this a little bit, that there was already some bids out. There were already some aircraft manufacturers that are looking for a high altitude spy plane. And they were kind of told not to do, it's too late. We got other bids coming in. And he said, well, no, here's my design and we can fly this thing in 8 months. And they were like, we're still going to go with these two, but if that's what you want to do, no guarantees. And they literally had that thing off the ground in 9 months, a complete design that is still in service today.
What year did you say they did that?
That was 1955.
Wow,
is when they were flying that thing.
What's the ceiling on that thing? It was 80,000 feet.
Yeah,
I mean that's crazy.
Yeah, and there's the. We're not going to talk about this on the public airwaves, but Francis Gary Powers, the guy that got shot down. I got a little information on the back end of that. One of my dad's best friends in the Air Force was the crew chief for that mission, which is pretty interesting. But in the most recent budget that was submitted, the Air Force plans to continue maintaining that aircraft at least out to 2025. So it's not necessarily being mothballed yet. Number 1, the A-10 Thunderbolt. I have never been rescued by an A-10 that's out there, but my oldest, I was an Air Force brat, and the oldest I was when we lived on a base was with the 23rd Tactical Fighter Wing, which had the A-10s, the Flying Tigers, which is the tiger teeth. So if they had tiger teeth, they were from the 23rd Tactical Fighter Wing. Just the first cockpit I ever sat in was with an A-10. And then after my dad retired from active duty, he went to work as a contract supervisor, civil service for the Air Force. And one of the contracts that he managed was for an Air Force bombing range, which happened to be 15 minutes from where I grew up. So if the wind was right, could literally hear the strafing and the bombing from the A-10s. And I've spent hours upon hours in the scoring towers at the bombing range watching those things fly by and strafe at just about eye level.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. And then they're not allowed to ask for things from the pilots is when they talk, on the bombing runs and whatnot. So they figured out a pretty good way to say, could you come back for a flyby without saying, could you come back for a flyby? Which was, we had some guests here today and they were very impressed with what your performance that you had today or whatever. And they were like, we'd like to come back around for another pass. And I'll never forget the day. I was in college when this happened, but I was looking at a pilot at eye level flying an A-10.
Oh, that's cool.
And he looked over and waved, and I could see the digits, in his glove. He's just, because he's that close, and I'm just watching him fly. And that tower was at 85 feet. So,
wow.
Pretty cool. And show and tell. So the P-51 Mustang was equipped with 50 caliber Browning machine guns, which that's a 50 cal. And the Burt that you hear from an A-10 is a 30 millimeter, which
and then
Troy has here for you. For those of you who are on audio, you're not going to get to see this pretty cool stuff, but we got a couple bullets here from the airplanes. Those are inert, by the way. They have been fired. But an A-10 can spit out 65 of those in 1 second.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I want to say, as they're firing those, I forget what the round count is for those, and then you get the tracer. But I mean, it's a few hundred.
Yeah.
And then there's a tracer. Like, holy cow, that much lead is going downrange.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's amazing. And
torque, sometimes it's not lead.
The torque depleted uranium for tanks. The torque of that gun causes is that pitch. I don't know.
You're looking
It
at the wrong guy.
It
to answer
causes the
that
airplane
question.
to roll.
Look over there.
Yeah. So they have a compensation built into the design of the aircraft. So when they pull that trigger, that it'll actually lean into it, so it doesn't turn so much. It doesn't roll. I guess. So anyway, that's my number one.
Nice. Cool. Very good.
I tell you guys are military guys. Love the military airplanes.
You'll be able to tell I'm not.
So I actually have 6.
Oh, go for it.
And since I'm the guest, I guess
You
you
get
just
to do
shut
it.
my mic off. So I did it in military and in
Oh, okay.
and commercial. So military starts with the Stearman biplane,
Okay.
and part of that's because it was so important to the plant here. And then I love the T-38.
Yeah, Tweety Bird.
The trainer.
Yeah.
It is just so sleek and so beautiful. I would
And that's a
love-
side by side seats.
I would love to fly. I think it's front back.
Oh, front back.
I think it's
Okay.
front back. And and then the P-38.
Yeah.
My dad was on a P-38 ground crew in World War II.
Okay.
So I've always been fascinated with the
The P-38.
P-38. And then on the commercial side, actually my first, I mixed it up just a little bit. The Stearman is actually on the commercial side because
Oh, okay.
it meant so much to the plant here.
Yeah.
And my all-time favorite airplane on the military side is the B-29.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Doc is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, Doc's an awesome thing. And, you guys probably know this, but prior to the B-29 and the atomic bombs, we had a plan to invade Japan. And a lot of people didn't know about the atomic bombs.
Right.
So they thought we were going to have to invade Japan. The estimate of fatalities to invade Japan was 1.5 million. My dad was in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
In World War II. And literally the capability of the B-29 is why I'm here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because even if he hadn't been a fatality, he'd have been delayed coming home 1, 2, 3 years, whatever
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
So most of us here can trace back that the B-29 has a lot to do with the fact that we're here.
We're here. And
And
Wichita as a whole. I
Yeah.
mean, that spun up the scale
Yeah, of the plant.
manufacturing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there's still machines out there that build parts that actually built parts for.
So for our listeners that don't know, we mentioned Doc earlier, but there's a fully restored B-29 that calls Wichita home now.
Yeah.
That is it was rebuilt over a number of years, probably about 3 years ago, started where they were taking flight.
Yep.
Gorgeous aircraft. And some of the same people that put rivets in the original airframe kind of came back.
And Connie or Rosie the River.
Rosie the
Yeah.
River. Yeah.
That's just awesome. It's really neat.
I've actually got some footage of it because I did a project over there of them restoring it and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah?
So, yeah, it's
Cool.
pretty cool.
A lot of times that flight path goes right over the house
Yeah.
out by the lake and
It's
comes back.
it's got a special sound.
Yeah, it does.
It's
It does.
Those big old engines.
Yeah.
So my
To commercial.
my
Yeah.
all-time, two different commercial I want to mention. The first one is the 737.
Yeah.
That sustains the plant. So
Yep.
the Stearman started the plant. The 737 really saved. Of course, there were B-29s in there and B-52s and a bunch of favorites. But
Yeah.
But the 737 is awesome, absolutely awesome airplane, and so much so that it's now the sub hunter for the
Oh, really? Okay.
it's,
For the Navy?
for the Navy. Yeah, it's an outfitted 737 that
Yeah.
drops sonobuoys and torpedoes probably.
Yeah.
Although that's classified.
Yeah. We're just guessing.
But I don't know. We're just guessing.
Yeah.
And then my favorite business aircraft is a Citation 10.
Yeah.
We bought 2 of those from Cessna when I was CEO of Spirit. They're still using them. They're great. God, they're just great airplanes. They're time machines.
Yeah.
They get you from point A to point B really fast.
Yeah.
Really fast. I actually had the opportunity to fly from here to I think it was Houston, and from takeoff to touchdown, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Wow.
And I looked, and I was so, I mean, and that thing, when it took off, I mean, it's almost just straight up,
Yeah.
you know, and then you get to, I think we were cruising at 47,000 feet, somewhere in there.
They got a high ceiling.
Yeah.
At a speed of Mach 0.98. I mean, we're almost Mach 1.
You had some
Wow.
tailwind. It
Yeah.
really. You could so in the industry, a lot of my compatriot CEOs would have bigger cabined airplanes. You know,
Right.
You could stand up, walk around in. We could literally leave Wichita, stop in Gander or somewhere in Canada, fill up with gas, and beat them, and they would fly nonstop.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to stop along the way.
Now they claimed that was better because they could bed down and not have to get up, but I have to get up anyway.
Yeah.
So I might as well get up in Gander.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would love that airplane.
Yeah. Awesome.
Wow. It's good stuff.
All right, Troy.
All right, number 3. DJI Mavic 2 Pro.
Is this a drone?
It's a drone.
Yeah, it's a drone.
That's,
I knew none of y'all would go there,
yeah.
but I'm a FAA certified drone pilot, and that's one of my aircrafts.
So is this one of your you have multiple aircrafts?
That's one that I fly. I used to fly some older models that crashed. You know.
So, like, do you fly it from your phone, or do you have this special thing?
I fly it from well, the viewfinder is your phone, and then you have
It controls
you plug it into a controller and you fly it with the controller, but you see where you're going and everything with the controls on the phone.
I have one as well.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite aircraft by far.
It's just number 3 on 9. Yeah.
Although they are nice though, because out of my property, I can get that thing up there and I can actually see, you know, you get that whole view of your land and you can actually fly your trails, and it's pretty handy.
It's fun to have. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Number 2 is the B-52 bomber.
Yeah.
So growing up in Shreveport, Louisiana, right by Barksdale, those are the bombers that I saw flying around, just like you saw your bombers here. Saw the B-52.
Those were easier to see because you had a trail of black smoke coming out of the 8 engines on that thing.
Yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, I see it. Oh, there's a line. Yeah, there it is.
There it is. Yeah. And then number 1 is the F-14 Tomcat.
Yeah, that's because of Top Gun.
Who didn't want to be Maverick when they were, you know, in grade school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. So my dad's ties to the B-52 is he was stationed in Italy on a special communication site. It was on a mountaintop on the island of Sardinia. And every day during the Cold War, when he was stationed there, they had bombers that would take off and fly across the Med towards Russia to bomb them. Like, just in this constant state of preparedness. And his site was the last communication point. This is before satellite type communication, was the last place they could radio them to turn them around to not bomb Russia that day, because Russia didn't choose to bomb us that day. But they were taking off and headed across to go. It was tense there for a little while.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah. And at that time, they had a crew on standby. Actually, this was, you know, quite a bit. They had a crew on standby there at Barksdale, just in constant readiness to. They had a little house and a plane ready to roll right next to it at the end of the flight line, where they could just get in, take off, and go start dropping.
Wow.
Tomahawks. Yeah. Crazy. Cool.
All right.
Not too bad.
It's a good top 3.
It was a good top 3. That F-14, my neighbor at hunting camp, he sold a couple of years ago, but he was actually an instructor at Top Gun and flew F-4s in Vietnam, but then was the kind of one of the guys that initially flew that F-14, not necessarily as a test pilot, but I don't know what the Navy does when they bring in a new craft, but he was one of those pilots to learn that. And he actually helped advise on the movie Top Gun.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
Yeah. So that's my tie to the F-14.
Yeah.
There you go.
You couldn't have done that inverted thing, by the way. I don't think that was real. He probably told him that, and they're like, yeah, we're still doing it. It's a good clip.
He's probably like, yeah, I did that. Knowing this guy, he might have. You know? he was.
They got that from him.
He probably did. He was flying. You know, he had his own little airplane that he'd fly in, and then he just got to where he was. He felt that he was too old to fly safely, and so he started driving, and then the drive just became too much for him. But still a great guy living at large on his lake house.
Good deal. All right. Well, Matt, you're going to bring us to a good word.
I am going to bring you to a good word. And the good word for today is choice.
Oh, I like that.
So I actually just started reading a book by Dr. Edith Edger called The Choice. And so she was actually, she survived the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And so she went in as a child, I think, and I'm only like 9 or 10 chapters into the book right now because I read slow. Mm-hmm. But
I was kind of shocked that you said you were reading a book.
I know it doesn't happen too often. I typically listen to my books, but I'm reading this one, and but she talks in the book about because she's now a psychologist. And that's what she does. And she helps people through trauma or whatever it is. And she goes, you have to make a choice. So you can either, be focused on your past and just choose to focus negatively on that, or you can look ahead and choose to look positively ahead. And she kind of, she starts out in her book talking about this guy who came in. He's an Army captain. And he was almost just catatonic when he came in, and she goes, and she recognized that because that used to be her, but then she started making the choices to confront that and not to let the past define her. And it's all a choice. And just like, you were saying it in business, you can make the choice to live that Christ-like life all week or just on Sunday. And all that stuff is just it's an individual choice that we all make. And so choosing to live that, I think, is what all of us should do. And I struggled to do that myself.
Yeah.
And that's a huge struggle for me. So I understand exactly where you're coming from on that. Because it is a struggle, but we have to consciously choose to live the right way. And so, and you quoted those verses. I didn't even have any verses set for today. So I think that was just divine intervention on that. So, but everything we do, we have a choice. And so just make the right one.
Yeah. And if you haven't, that doesn't mean you can't start. Right.
Exactly. I mean, there's no better time to start than now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you've made some bad choices in the past, you can always turn it around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may not be able to get out of your punishment, but you can choose to do the right thing moving forward.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. I like it.
Make good choices.
Thank you, Matt. Jeff, thank you, sir.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was extremely interesting. I wasn't able to say much because I was just listening.
Yeah. Thanks for being on, but thank you for who you are and what you do and all the people you impact. And we kind of talked earlier, Troy knows you from a ministry that you guys have worked with in Firm Foundations, and our mutual friend Matt Thomas, and just a lot of the stuff that you do in the community here is just fantastic. Really appreciate you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's take us out of here.
I got it.
He means he's going to hit the button for the music.
I got it.
Again, thank you for tuning in to Hardheaded Podcast this week. We really appreciate you. Thank you for the time you spend listening to us. And don't forget to go to hardheadedpodcast.com, buy some merchandise if you want a t-shirt or
Yeah, look, I'm wearing one today.
a pillow. Thanks to our model Troy for that. And thank you, Jeff Turner, for being with us today. And we'll catch you next week. Harmless?
Harmless. I've been in a lot tougher interviews.
We're not after those.